Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and the message I'm about to speak to you has been inspired by the recent passage of, and most of our friends. He was my friend too, but before I want to touch on that, I just want to take care of a little business before pleasure. Now, some of you may be looking at the title of this below the screen and even or looking across and seeing the one who is giving you this message against death. And, some of you might be saying, but, he killed someone. Who is he to have a message against death? He has no moral high ground. Look, you can laugh at me all you want, and I can laugh at you at all I like, but at the end of the day, and the beginning and everywhere in between, death is no laughing matter. This is something we have to take seriously. We cannot take it lightly. So whether you know me or not, whether you hate me or not, whether your opinion has just diminished of me because of what I did, I think we're all in this together. And you got to ask yourself, do you want to keep on living as if we'll live forever, laughing at death the whole time? If you do that, death's going to have the last laugh, because guess what? One day you're going to wake up and the world's going to keep on spinning at the same rate it was before you were here, and somebody's going to get all of your stuff. Now, I'm not trying to be argumentative. My goal is to provoke discussion, not debate, but just to take care of the business before pleasure. Just want to dismantle the argument of that coward I sort of caricatured earlier. Yes, I did kill someone. I didn't mean to. I didn't plan to. But that doesn't change the fact that it is irrevocable. It cannot be. I wish I could bring it back. I wish I could wish and just bring it back. But that's something I'm not able to do, and that's a mistake I have to live with and learn from. In my opinion, what I did wasn't a failure, a moral failure, but a failure of judgment, and you can argue otherwise. But once more, I'm not trying to provoke argument or controversy. What I did, it makes me no worse or no greater than anyone else's more private failings of equal wickedness. I'm not better than anyone. You're not better than me. We're all the same. We're all in this together. And I think that far from disqualifying me from having a message about death, I think my experience in causing the death of another has stimulated an intensity of thought about the concept and the reality of death, which has been somewhat reawakened at an accelerated intensity in light of the passage of our recent passage of our mutual friend. And at one point I was an agent of death, but I'm an evangelist for life now. God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. I wasn't always a visible and verbal witness to his transformative power, but I am now. And don't hate me because I'm blessed. There's no advantage, there's no point, there's no percentage in hating someone else because they are spiritually gifted or gifted in anything else. Now that business is concluded, I just want to remind that I'm not trying to stimulate debate or about who's the messenger is, but discuss about what the message is about, and that is death. And this is a subject I think we ignore at our own peril and needs to be discussed honestly and openly between friends and family. Now, I don't even have to know you to offer my services if you're struggling with depression or having suicidal thoughts or anything along those lines. I want you to feel free to come to me with your questions. Even if you feel you can't trust anyone with these, I cannot promise that I'll have all the answers. I cannot promise that I will. But what I can promise is that I will listen and I will not judge. And this friend of ours, now I'm not going to name his name because it's really no one else's business, much like the fact that I once killed someone is auto accident, didn't murder anyone, is no one else's business except whom I choose to divulge it. So our friend, you can recognize him. I'm just going to refer to him as him from now out. And we all knew him differently, but I just want to explain to you how I knew him. He was a beautiful, engaging, dynamic personality. He attracted warmth and generated just charisma. And how I became friends with him, we sort of ignited the passion of an artistic intensity, which he died with, that I have no longer have. Our friendship was very much formed over artwork, and we were both kind of self-taught artists, at least in the beginning, who we taught ourselves sort of via osmosis. And we did that all throughout high school. Then we went and ended up at the same college, and that's when I learned that the student had become the master, and he'll probably leave behind a more beautiful portfolio of artwork than I might do in however much longer I have to live. So I don't think his life was unsuccessful. He left it a more beautiful and better place, but he did die way too young. He had his whole life ahead of him, and he's not the only one. I've had friends and I've had family, just these people I sort of grew up with, and then I've become more recently acquainted with, but have formed a bond, just perishing one by one, and it's way too soon. And premature deaths are both avoidable and preventable. They're not natural or necessary. We were not designed to die before our time has come. That just doesn't make any sense. We're not designed to decay and perish before our time comes, before death takes its natural course. And most of these premature deaths aren't really natural. They're either from suicide or drug overdose, and that's also not natural. But death is inescapable. Whether we escape it for how long, it's ultimately inescapable. It's something we can't escape. And there is a democracy about death, as described by the English philosopher John Donne. Let me tell you what he had to say about death. Death is the great equalizer. It makes us all equal. It comes to us all equally and makes us all equal as it comes. And even though it does come to us all the same and makes us all the same when it comes, it does not come to us in the exact same way. Now, most of us would like to live and die in our sleep in a ripe old age, and I think our friend was fortunate to die in his sleep in peacefulness, but he was unfortunate, and we are poorer for his absence because he died too young. The world is a worse place now that he's no longer in it, and I'm going to miss him terribly as long as I have life left. That's But now, life is very much a preparation for death. We literally begin dying the day we are born. We are set in motion to decay and destroy and perish from the day we die. We have this natural orientation and natural stimulation about we're geared towards instincts, so we all want to survive, but the fact is none of us can change that we were designed to die, not right away and not prematurely, but eventually and inevitably we all must decay and perish in accordance to the laws of physics and of nature, which we are at mercy of. And we live to see others die in the course of our lives on Earth, and that causes us to mourn. So death not only affects the dead, but also affects the living. And the fact is that mourning is a process. It's not an exact science. There's all these books out there, the 7 levels of grief, all these magical elixir numbers and formulas. But the fact is, I think they're a bunch of hooey. Don't waste your time or money reading those books. Because the fact is that no two people grieve in the same way or in the exact same manner. It's not an exact science. These quacks and pseudoscientists may make a convincing argument that it is, but the fact is that it is not. No two people mourn the same way. And we live in a culture of death. We have abortion, the world's #1 killer. We have politicians lighting up buildings in the sky because that they're now allowed to kill babies and past the womb, not only up to 9 months, but past the womb in the state of New York. And cigarettes and alcohol and drugs take way too many of us way too young. And also obesity is a little known fact. 21% of our healthcare expenditures in the United States of America, which form 18% of our GDP, are allocated to obesity-related illnesses. So the medical industry, they are loving the fact that most of us are dying a slow, sudden death. They cannot get that's how they stick their filthy, greasy paws in us. They want us to keep us healthy enough to not die, but die when we are no longer worth the cost of preserving. So there is, but we also, we live in a culture of death, but we also live in a death-denying culture. A lot of, when's the last time you even had a discussion on death, and the mere thought or mention of death is avoided because it's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable. People don't want to think about that stuff, but it comes sometime soon and suddenly, and when it does, there is no return. So this is something I feel we should discuss with others, and I'm going to give you more details on the curricula of our discussions later. And death is shocking to others. I didn't even... I was completely taken aback when I heard who had died and how he died. I was perplexed and bewildered for a period of some days, and I couldn't even make sense out of this senseless death, but I have been thinking about it, and I have been connecting it to my own experience in bringing death. We're not going to discuss that further. But then there's the great answered question. We all know that we who live must die, but then there's the mystery of the afterlife. My faith is so strong at this moment in time that I have an all but concrete certainty that there is a heaven and there is a hell, but I'm not trying to push my views on yours. I'm not trying to do your thinking for you, but what I want you to do is think about these things for yourself. And if my thoughts on death can influence, guide, or any way, shape, or form, or expand the parameters on your death, that's what I'm here for. And these are conversations I think we really need to have, and it's not daily, but occasionally. I'm not asked, to dwell constantly on death is no way to live at all. I'm not asking you people to go out to a party and turn down the music all the way and just talk about death. I'm not asking you to be Captain Buzzkills, but sometime soon and periodically and occasionally, just really gather your friends, your families, the ones you love and the ones you trust together to discuss death. You want to set your priorities in order. You want to write and discuss bucket list, which are things we want and need to do while we live before we die. And some of the questions we have to ask, we have to examine our priorities, and do we want to leave the world we left behind a better place, or do we want to die in our sins? I mentioned that premature death has hit my family, and I had a cousin. We had a really brother-like bond, and he struggled with addiction. He actually came to Christianity before I did. I'm not going to dwell on that too much because I know most of you aren't Christians. But he struggled with addiction for years. Then he came to the cross, allegedly, and then he had prolonged periods of sustained sobriety, but nothing permanent. He kept relapsing, and he'd be doing really well in life when he was clean and was sober. He was a natural-born salesman. When the last time I heard of him, as far as I knew, he was doing extremely well. He was a born salesman, natural salesman, talented salesman for this addiction rehab center or facility that he was entrusted or charged with recruiting clients to their services. And he was making a pretty good living at that. He had a 4-year-old son about to be engaged, but then I came home from work one night and I was given the news that my cousin had died of a heroin overdose. And so that I just began to question, did he really come to the cross? Was he really born again? Did he really repent if he died in the sin which prompted him to come to the cross in the first place? These are just, as cruel and heartless as it sounds, these are things I have to categorically consider, that he might be headed to a Christless eternity, but that's not up to me, and my faith in the judgment of God is total, that it will be just, and I don't have any insight or premonition of what lies on the other side of the veil. But I've probably already said more than I should to the audience I'm trying to address this as. It's unavoidable. That's just the way my mind's wired. I cannot make it through without at least thinking about God, theology, or the Bible. But just remember, sometime soon, and it's start at a yearly or bi-yearly, tri-yearly, whatever discussion forums with the friends and your family, just to discuss your bucket list, what it is you want to do before you live and die, and always be mindful that this life we have doesn't last forever, and I want you to live. The God who gave you life wants you to live, so that's why I'm sharing this message against death. I think we are all in this together, and I really sincerely want you to live. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. See you then. Bye-bye.